Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
This show is brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation with the mission of helping people find hope after loss. Well, Heidi, we know one of the big issues for a lot of people is happiness. Will I ever be happy after the loss of a child? And we're here to tell you that happiness after loss is a choice. And we're going to be talking to someone who's been there and has come through this, and you're going to get some great advice. So Heidi, you want to introduce our guest?
Sure, I'd love to, Mom. And like you said, happiness, and if we're ever going to have it again, I think is one of the biggest questions after you have loss. And our guest today is no stranger to loss. Her name is Chelsea Hanson, and she has had significant losses in her life, Mom. Her dad died when she was only 4. Her mom died when she was 28. So basically, she was an orphan by the time she was 28.
Wow.
She has had 2 miscarriages, and her brother-in-law has also died. She is the author of the Sudden Loss Survival Guide and presents workshops and seminars, and is the founder of with Sympathy Gifts and Keepsakes. So welcome to our show, Chelsea.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate the nice welcome.
Well, let's talk about your happiness 101 and your steps. You talk about something called joy block.
I believe what happens when we lose someone that we love, they die. We're in such deep grief. We don't know if we'll ever recover. We feel horrible. So, I don't like to repeat all those feelings because everyone knows what it feels like. It's horrible. So, but what a lot of people don't know is with your conscious intention, you can heal. With your conscious intention, you can bring more joy into your life. And when we bring joy into our life, it's not that we're going to forget our loved one who died. The joy and grief at first can sit by each other side by side.
People don't realize that, Chelsea, because people think, I have to be in one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I work with a lot of bereaved people, and typically a lot of ladies, and we just do not have a lot of grief education. So many people don't even know that one concept that would make a huge difference, or does make a huge difference to their healing, because we have all kinds of emotions, joy, awe, curiousness, gratitude on the positive side. So when we're in a grief, it's our job, let's say, if we want to get better, to do the hard work of grieving, and that means feeling all our human emotions, the whole range. And I believe when we consciously tap into joy, that helps us take a break from the hard work of grieving, but then our joy extends, it expands, it lengthens. So over time, we start to feel better gradually. And 2, I always want to point out, when we're feeling better, we're not forgetting the person who died. We will always love that person. We can never forget them. They will always be with us. So by us experiencing joy, to me, if we can reframe our thought and think, wow, I feel better, I'm going to live my life in honor of the person who died.
You've made that point before. Sometimes our grief is a connection. It's hard to give up, right?
Well, yes. And I think, like Chelsea's saying, our pain is more of a connection in the way that they died. And when we're living in joy and happiness, we're celebrating and connecting with them in the way that they lived.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's such a beautiful way to put it. Yeah, and if your listeners or viewers can reframe that in their mind. Like, I think, for example, my mom died when I was, like you said, 28, so I was fairly young. But it's kind of like our parents work so hard for us to have good lives that even though they're not here, let's pay tribute to them. Let's live our life beautifully in their honor. And that grief, initially, it doesn't tie us to the love. That's what we think. The grief keeps us close to the love. And I guess in some ways it does. But all the joy and love in our heart keeps us close to them too. And I know this is not easy, especially when you're like brand new to grief. You're probably like, are you crazy? How can I feel any joy?
Right.
But as time goes on, we can expand that joy muscle. And it's our decision each day. Okay, where can I find the joy? What can I do today? How can I realize a little joy today? And it's not to take away from the painful feelings people are having, but again, just to give them a break to feel that whole range of emotions. And that really leads to our resilience.
You talk about joy blocks. What are some of the blocks to us feeling
Sure,
joy?
sure. And the joy blocks are kind of like what we're talking about already, our beliefs that we have, like, I'll never get better. It
Mhm.
will always be this bad. Next year will be even worse. So it's those thought processes we
So,
have.
so it's kind of like you're catastrophizing.
Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And what we want to do is transform those false beliefs. When you think, oh, it's always going to be this bad, I'm going to feel terrible, you can ask yourself, okay, is this 100% true? You know, that's an easy thing you can do immediately that someone can remember. Is this really true? Am I always absolutely going to feel terrible? Do I know this 100% for certain? And typically you can't say, yes, you don't know 100% for certain. So it's just like reframing those thoughts, we
Taking
think.
a look, is it true? Is it really true? And what do I
Yeah,
do
and
for holding that
yeah,
belief? Yeah, yeah.
and
I
that's
love
just an
mine.
easy way to do it. There's more to it, but that's just an easy tip people
Right.
can do.
Well,
Is this
talk to
really?
us about creating a joy plan. Okay,
I
I
love that.
want to be more joyful. How do I
Sure,
begin
sure.
from the very beginning?
Yeah, yeah. And let me give you a couple techniques. And then once you have the techniques, then you can be like, okay, for my joy plan, what am I going to put in my joy plan? What can I actually do? It's kind of like how we plan our day. How am I going to plan the joy into my day? So one of the things that I do, and I still do it quite often, is I think about the joyful moments in my life. So what I would suggest to your listeners is just get a pad of paper, journal, whatever, and not relive yet, but write down some joyful memories you had in your life, whether graduating from college, falling in love. On my list is having my son, starting a new business. Those memories that really brought you joy, maybe when you were younger, something in high school. So for me, it's reliving or remembering the birth of my son. Another one is opening a new business for the first time. I remember jumping up and down with my coworkers, like, "Yay, we did it!" Um, and another one is just a memory I have from college, just a fun time with some friends. So think about those moments. So now that you remembered that memory, look at how your face lighted up, you know?
Exactly.
So the key is to relive that memory in your mind, like to embody that feeling. Like, how do you feel when you think about that? You just kind of replay that movie or that memory in your head and look at how much better we feel. So that's just like one little tip or trick you can do in your day when you're grieving, because you're going to be in that heart, those low emotions, those yucky emotions. So if you can remember that loving moment with the person who died or another moment, we're just like lifting our vibration. We're just feeling better in the moment. So you can just kind of do that throughout the day, you know. And I sometimes do it in the morning because I'm not a morning person.
Mm.
So, because I think, oh, I have so much to do today, you know. But, so then I'll kind of remember some of those memories, and that like perks me up, just so
Oh,
it
I like
brings
that.
me into joy because I'm
Mhm.
using that muscle. I'm exercising that muscle right away in the morning. So, and another thing you can do too is just add a little joyful activity into your day. So very simple. Think about what you like to do, whether reading, walking, swimming, whatever, going for a bike ride. And again, when you're new to grief, this is going to feel real difficult. But just do a couple minutes a day. Give yourself a break. Read a book for a couple minutes. Go for a walk. But the key is whatever activities you like, whatever brings you joy. So, for example, for me, I like to read, so that brings me joy. I like to spend time with my son, who's 13, and
Mhm.
really be present to him, so that brings me joy. So that's another activity you can add to your joy plan. Even in my book, I tell people just to start with 2 minutes a day,
I like
because
that.
they're going to not be back to their everyday life by any means. So it's just do a little, see how you feel. And then another activity that I recommend, which is kind of fun, easy, is just having like I call it a feel good book. So all it is a journal, pad of paper, paste everything in there that makes you feel good, whether
I love this.
pictures, quotes, memories. And for me, I just kind of, I have a bulletin board in my office, and I have all pictures on it that make me feel good. A lot of pictures of my son, different activities we did. So again, you're making that conscious effort. You're looking at something that brings you joy. The actual joy book that I have in my living room is just like a artist sketch pad. So I put in a lot of pictures from magazines, which, it sounds kind of hokey,
I
but
like
it
it.
works.
No, collages are amazing,
Yeah,
and it's fun to
yeah.
look and see what you are interested in. They turn out to be stories sometimes about your life.
Oh,
Interesting.
sure. Yeah, and like for Gloria, like those pretty flowers behind in your background, like in my joy book, I have pictures of flowers because I love stuff that's beautiful, pretty, and that kind of lifts my spirits. So anything like that lifts your spirits. So you can kind of page through this book when you're just sitting on the couch, you got the TV on, or really the key is whenever you start feeling low, kind of refer to your joy plan. And I would go as far as to say as writing it out for the listeners, because when you're in that yucky grief, you're not going to remember all these tips. So if you can even have a one page piece of paper saying, okay, I could do this, this, or this, 3 things, boom, you can look at it.
I love it.
I do too. That's great. So Chelsea, do you feel like you applied all of this? I mean, when your mom died, I mean, it must have been pretty overwhelming to be an orphan at 28. You must have felt like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why is it happening again? My dad dies first at 4 and now my mom. I mean, is that how you came up with a lot of this stuff? Is that you actually implemented some of it?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm kind of simplifying it here, right? But it certainly wasn't that simple. And I did not do these things immediately because at the time I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the support. So that's one of the reasons I wrote the Son-in-Law Survival Guide. These are all the things I pretty much had to learn the hard way over a lot of time. So if I would have had the proper knowledge, I think I could have made my mourning experience much better. My mom died in the 90s, so I think grief education wasn't as prevalent as it is now. For example, when I needed a counselor, I had to go get a phone book and call them on the phone. Google wasn't there. So that's why I'm really passionate about giving people a lot of tools. My book has tons of tools, but then the people can find what works for them depending where they are in their grief. If they're brand new, they're going to do different things. The Son-in-Law Survival Guide, 7 essential practices for healing grief. And the practices range all the way from the beginning of grief to the end of grief. Towards the end, we're using, I shouldn't say end, but where you are, the length of time from where your loss occurred is really what I mean. So
tell us about your website too, and your products, about your with Sympathy Gifts and Keepsakes.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, my website, it's called With Sympathy Gifts and Keepsakes. And my idea there is to honor and remember the person we love. And I like to do it with tangible reminders. I'm a big gift giver. So when someone dies, we get flowers, which are awesome, but then the flowers die and then the person feels bad. So I like having objects around me to remember my person so we can remember them in daily life. And then even you as the gift giver, the recipient, when they see that angel or garden stone, whatever you gave them, they'll be like, oh yeah, that was so nice, she gave that to me. Oh, that person really was caring for me. So they're almost reminded of your care again when they see that object. that
So there are a
tangible object.
number of things on your site that people can buy and give as gifts. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on our show today. And thanks for all the good and all the wonderful things you do. And your book is amazing. And it would be a great gift to give to someone.
Right. Yeah. To set
for
the
you.
foundation for healing. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for just reminding us that we do have a choice, because, you know, there's a lot of things that happen that are out of our control, like death. But
Right.
you are an example of losing many, many people in your life and making choices to honor their memory through living your own best life. So thank you.
Thanks.
And we thank everybody for joining us today. And we do want to remind you, Heidi and I and Chelsea do, that happiness after a loss is a choice. It may not, it'll be a hard choice early on, but as things move along later, you will find happiness again. I'll tell you that we have wonderful lives, and you can too. And Heidi and I always want to remind you, if you're in a bad spot right now and you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.